What are the family dramas that broke lawyers' hearts in an unbelievable way? Story 1. Woman divorces her husband due to an awful mother-in-law. Ex-husband wants back in after a year of hell from his mother. I will be rambling a little as I am very mad right now. Sorry for my bad English, it is not my first language. My ex and I were married for well over 5 years, and together for 10. His mother was a nightmare. She would spend her time belittling me and trying to humiliate me. I could take it as I loved my husband and didn't want to make him choose between her or me. Of course, I would always tell him what she would be doing, and he would always brush it off as her being a loving and overprotective mum. When she would say something racist, I am Hispanic and they are white, he would laugh it off. When she would make a comment about me being a gold digger, even though I earned more than my ex, he would just say, "Oh, mum." He would also get mad at me if I ever stood up for myself. But the straw that broke the camel's back was when we had our daughter. My mother-in-law would always try to parent her and say that I would do something wrong. My daughter has an irritable colon and cannot ingest any kind of oils or artificial things, and guess what that woman did? She fed my 3-year-old daughter essential oils. She is not anti-vaccine, just very ignorant, to make her go to sleep. My daughter ended up in the ICU. I had it. I confronted my husband, who said, "She only did what she thought was best." I lost it. I went to my parents and drafted a divorce agreement. That's the best course of action. I saw a post earlier describing a situation that is much more dangerous than mine involving allergens and an EpiPen. His face was like that Pikachu meme when I served him. He didn't know why I was doing that because we were happy. So now a year has passed, and my life was hell. My monster-in-law tried every dirty trick in the book to take my daughter, to name a few. She accused my brother of inappropriate behavior. She accused me of neglect. She accused me of taking substances and leaving them within reach of a toddler. I take thyroxine, for heaven's sake. She accused me of endangering my daughter by leaving a random man in my house. The list goes on. During this time, the excuse of my ex was that I broke his heart and that I had to understand his mother. She only wants what's best for him. Luckily, I got good representation and even got my daughter full-time minus some weekends or visitation. I could prove that my daughter was endangered by his mother. So now to the advice part. I knew that my ex needed to be permanently in my life because of my daughter, and I was learning to live with that. He was very cold with me because, again, I broke his heart. Now, 2 things have come together. My ex-brother-in-law got married to an African-American woman, so of course, my ex-mother-in-law flipped. I started dating again. My ex-brother-in-law is a great guy, and he actually stood up for his wife. Go figure, it is possible. I stay in contact with him because we are friends, and he was a mediator and fought with his brother quite often. So my brother-in-law actually stood up for his wife, and my ex-husband got his feelings hurt. My brother-in-law basically opened his eyes to how awful he was being, and that their mum treated me the same way she treated his wife. And finally, my dense ex started understanding. The guy I am seeing is great. I have even met his parents, and his mother is normal. She treats me like a human being, and has already invited me to many family functions, and tries to make me and my daughter feel welcomed. My ex got wind of the situation through a mutual friend, and guess who is now flipping out? He started bringing flowers and chocolate, I don't even like chocolate, to pick up our daughter. He sends me cards and SMS messages with hearts and who knows what. Yesterday was the best thing. My daughter was at my mother's place, and I was at home with my boyfriend. My ex appeared in front of my door crying and clutching my engagement ring, begging me to come back. I said no and told him to go away. He wouldn't, and started demanding that I come out to talk to him. My boyfriend told him that he would call the police, and in his pathetic fashion, he threatened to beat my boyfriend up. I closed the door and let him pound sand. Today he picked up my daughter for a day trip, and when they came back, my daughter was asking if I loved my boyfriend more than her. Now I am at a loss about what to do. I already told my daughter that it was impossible, because my love for her is infinite, and there is nothing bigger than infinite. But now I know that my ex is trying to make my daughter hate me. I am at a loss because I won't use my daughter as ammunition. But also, what the hell am I supposed to do? I will never return to that man, but I can't take away the father of my daughter. Do you guys have any advice? Edit. Mini update. Thank you all. I needed to vent and was feeling helpless, and I am so thankful for you wonderful people. I talked to my lawyer, who confirmed that we could have a case for domestic violence by proxy. A social worker will be visiting us in the next few days to talk to my daughter about this. Edit. Because apparently people want to spin the narrative on me. I don't care if he wants me back. I don't love him anymore and will never get back together with him. Staying for the sake of our daughter would not make sense, as it has been proven that kids grow up happier in divorced homes than in unhappy homes. I tried talking to my husband when we were still married, and he would always brush it off. He would brush off everything his mother did. I complained to him and told him we needed to go to therapy, which he declined. He has his daughter on the weekends. The court gave me majority custody because of his mother. Geez. I guess in some of y'all's eyes I should have kept being by my ex's side as a submissive pushover. Second post. Next day. I just posted here yesterday, but it feels like weeks have happened. So I have just left my daughter with my mother and am going to my lawyer again. I followed some advice you guys gave me, and we sat down with my daughter to chit-chat. We knew we couldn't prompt any kind of responses by asking overly specific questions as per her therapist. So my mother asks my daughter, let's call her Kat. Kat, what do you and Daddy talk about? And Kat just listed many toddler things, like she talks about kindergarten, games, etc. When I was kind of relieved that that comment my ex made yesterday may just be a one-off, came the big bomb. He also shows me pictures of houses and tells me I can have now 2 rooms with loads of stuff. I ask if her dad is buying a new house. Nope. Turns out that man wants to take my daughter out of the country. He shows her pictures of beach houses and even bought her a bag so she can put her stuff inside it. Which explains why so many of her clothes have gone missing. At first, I thought that maybe my ex hadn't told me yet because it hadn't come through. But no, he told my daughter to keep this as a secret because Mummy would get sad if she knew that Daddy was going away. So, I am beyond furious, and also sad because I will have to tell my daughter no. Once again, I feel lost. Edit. Update. I talked to my lawyer, and we have taken measures that I can't discuss here, but we are on it. I have my daughter's passport as we flew last month to visit extended family. Also, I am a US citizen, so even if my ex-mother-in-law tried to have me deported, that wouldn't be possible. Final update. Sep 5, 2019, 2 weeks later. So I thought of giving you the last update as you helped me through this. I didn't have enough evidence to request an ex parte, aka emergency child custody, so my lawyer and I had to work on steps to prevent child abduction. We got a custody decree that included provisions, including passports, travel restrictions, etc. We also had to be very wary of the signs. He in fact quit his job, and on a realtor's page, I saw that he was putting his mother's house on sale. That and my daughter's words were all we needed to notify law enforcement for them to keep an eye out. I couldn't prevent my daughter from seeing her father. We tried to continue business as usual without my daughter feeling something was up. I got a call from the police department regarding the passport situation. My daughter's passport had expired very recently, 5 years validity. My ex-husband had tried to request a passport for my daughter without my knowledge, which was foolish because even without the decree, I had to be present or submit a notarized document stating that he could request the passport. After that, things actually went very fast. He was investigated because he violated the decree, and it was found out that his mother had bought 3 tickets with no return date to Mexico. I could request an ex parte. After a mountain of documents, I submitted it. In most cases, the judge will evaluate behind closed doors. We had the hearing yesterday. It takes usually 10 to 20 days, which was very good for me. At the moment, I have sole custody of my daughter. This is all temporary. My ex has visitation rights if I am present, but he can't take her anywhere. This is once the investigation of him is closed. I was cursed out by my ex and his mother, and they said they will try to contest this, but they have no leg to stand on. My daughter will continue in therapy, especially after this. I will not prohibit him from seeing her, but he needs help. This was really scary, and a very intense 2 weeks. I don't think that I will update again, but I wanted to thank you all for your tips and support. I am really thankful, as I am finally not anxious the whole time. Thank you very much. Story 2. My husband almost harmed our baby and my toddler saved him. Original post, March 11, 2024. Hey Reddit, I need to share this story because I'm still shaking from what happened. I'm a 25 years old female, been with my husband, 30 years old male, since 2018. We have a 3-year-old girl and a newborn boy. But tonight, things almost took a devastating turn. My husband has always had trouble paying attention, but I never thought it would come to this. Our neighborhood is weirdly laid out, with cars zooming by at crazy speeds at all hours of the day. I was folding clothes when I heard our toddler screaming, "Dad, help!" That tone made me drop everything and sprint outside. What I saw made my blood run colder, newborn in his stroller, rolling towards the busy street. I screamed and ran to him, barely stopping the stroller in time. My baby girl's hands and knees were scratched up because she tripped trying to run after the stroller. I snatched up my baby, heart pounding, and scanned for my husband. He wasn't watching, he was chatting with neighbors, completely oblivious. The anger I felt was unlike anything I've ever experienced. I stormed up to him, shouting in disbelief. He looked shocked at first, then realized what almost happened. The apologies and tears came pouring out, but it was too late. I couldn't wrap my head around how he could be so careless, so blind to our toddler's screams and the stroller rolling away. I packed up the kids and left, staying with my parents. They're on my side, but my husband keeps texting, begging forgiveness, calling it an honest mistake. But I can't shake the terror of almost losing my baby because he couldn't focus for a single second. My baby girl got hurt in the process. I almost lost my son. I can't stop crying. I feel so guilty. I wish this all never happened. Sorry it's short. I just want to hold my babies and I can't stop shaking every time I think about it. What if I was just 1 second late? Would I have been planning a funeral? And the reason I left the house instead of him was because I hate that house. I don't feel like it's safe for the kids with all the traffic, and I was right. It's my husband's work house. I can't be running either. I had a C-section less than 6 weeks ago. A lot of people are saying, why wasn't I watching the kids? I was doing their laundry like a parent. He takes them for walks to have bonding time with them. He literally created this by himself. This has never happened before. How was I supposed to know? And people saying, why didn't I get him checked out? I'm not his mother, he is 30 years old. I'm sick of people acting like I have to parent my own husband while I literally have a newborn, a toddler, and I'm still healing from a C-section that I tore my stitches from when I ran to get my baby. I don't care if it was his ADHD, the court wouldn't care either. If he had killed my child, he would have gone to prison, either way. Relevant comments. Additional info from original poster. Specific Yam, 2166. Okay, he was 100% wrong and I'd be livid just like you. However, I'm a little confused by the situation. Like, why was your baby just in a stroller unattended? Why did the stroller randomly go into the road? Since it sounds like you were at home, is this maybe something you'll normally do just to have a place for baby to sit out front of your house when your toddler is playing outside? And maybe was a freak accident? I'm going to be honest, as a mum, most of us have stories of near-death experiences with our kids. We can be naive and stupid and expect a little child to have more awareness, survival skills than they do. When my son was 2, we had a horrible experience with an escalator, and I still have times where I can't sleep because of it. We are all idiots when it comes to parenting, because how can you know until you live it? And seriously, like every parent has one of these moments, unless you're one of those insanely lucky ones. I still really don't understand the whole scenario of what happened, but to me it seems he really has remorse and feels terrible, and once you go through something like that, you never forget it. So if he cares and loves your kids, he's devastated and has learned a hard lesson. I don't know that your response was the best, but I get why you did it in the moment. But I think you guys have a serious talk, and maybe look into moving if possible. I wouldn't go straight to divorce like Reddit loves to preach. I think there is a solution here. And so sorry you're dealing with this. It's literally the worst feeling in the world. Original poster. Hi love, let me just clear it up for you. So I was sitting inside in the lounge room, and there's a huge window behind the TV that was a little open so I could hear outside. That's when I heard my toddler scream for her dad to help. When I went outside, he was standing on the neighbor's driveway. I assume that he must have left the baby literally on the road because there was no possible way that it would have rolled off like that. My toddler was playing with the neighbor's cat before she noticed her brother was rolling away. When I confronted him about it, he tried to explain but just kept stuttering. I still don't know what exactly happened. I don't know if he didn't put the brakes on the stroller or if the wind blew him away, I just don't know. My neighbor contacted me and asked if I wanted the security footage because his wife is 100% on my side, so I'll probably find out once it gets sent to me. I want to acknowledge that this is a horrific situation, but saying I don't care if it was his ADHD isn't going to fix anything and will probably only make things worse. Talking and thinking about it like he intentionally tried to harm your child isn't either. With ADHD, you actually do not register things like this at all sometimes. Life expectancy for those of us with ADHD is significantly lower because many of us end up, often accidentally, causing ourselves harm. It is not the same thing as carelessness, but learning about ADHD more deeply can help you all be safer. Understanding how my ADHD works and using different than standard precautions, like my brain needs, has actually most likely saved my life. Lay out what you want from him. That's probably that he get his ADHD better under control, whether that be through prescription medication or more homeopathic methods that you get a different place if possible, that he not take your kids out in the front yard without you, etc. Also, neither he nor the neighbor noticed, but you heard your kid from inside. Something seems off here. Were your neighbors just watching the stroller roll toward the street? Was your husband on the other side of your house where he couldn't see the stroller? Were you already walking outside as this unfolded? I'm trying to understand better what was going on here and why your husband or the neighbor did not notice, but you did from inside. People with ADHD tend to be incredibly good and quick to act in emergency situations, so this is especially weird. I'm absolutely not accusing you of leaving anything out, but asking you to think about what your husband and the neighbor were doing that neither noticed. That seems suspicious. This is a horrible situation. I lost a pet due to the inattentiveness of ADHD, but I can't imagine losing, or even nearly losing a child. Original poster. That's why I'm waiting for the footage. It doesn't make sense how this all happened. I don't know how to explain my house. There's a huge window in the lounge room that was open a little so I could listen out. The neighbor's house is 2 houses away. We are at the end of the street near the main road. When you first walk into my house, on your left there is the lounge, on the right the kitchen. When I got up, I couldn't run that fast because I'm still healing. Sorry if this doesn't make sense. When I ran outside, the neighbor's wife was running for the stroller, but was still far away, and the neighbor was helping my little girl off the road. That's all I saw. I'm just waiting for a response from them. My husband was just standing there, hands on his head, doing nothing. Theanimedlingling. I screamed when I read what happened. Are you okay? Like, did you get any more damage to yourself? You literally just had a baby. What was your husband doing? Being outside with small children, especially on a busy street, should be treated like watching babies swim, because anything can happen in an instant. I hope you are okay. And also, I don't know, but do you all have cameras in your house? I wonder how long your husband was talking to the neighbor. Original poster. I tore my stitches from the C-section and had to go to the ER. While I was there, I made sure my baby girl got her knees and hands bandaged up. The crazy thing is, I didn't even realize I was bleeding until I was in my parents' car. My mum pointed it out. She panicked, took baby boy back to their house, and my dad took me and my daughter to the hospital. Original poster dated 11 hours later. Update. The neighbor's wife sent me the footage, and I really can't wrap my head around it. My husband was walking with the stroller, and our toddler was in front of them when they passed the neighbor's house. My neighbor was outside, washing his car, and my toddler saw his pet cat and stopped to go pet it, so my husband stopped. He left our baby on the road. He didn't even bother locking the wheels and walked all the way up the driveway, not even bothering to look back at the baby. He had his back turned for about 5 minutes before the stroller just suddenly started moving. I think it's because the road is on a hill, kind of, or it could have been the wind. My toddler never went near the stroller, it couldn't have been her. The stroller went down the road, and that's when she started screaming and running after it when she saw. The neighbor started running after my daughter when she tripped. He tried to pick her up. That's when the neighbor's wife's car comes into frame, and she stops and starts running back to where the stroller is. After that, you can't really see anything because it's all out of frame, but you can hear all the commotion. my husband just stood there the whole time, hands on his head with a blank stare on his face. He didn't even do anything when our toddler was crying from hurting herself. He only started crying when I confronted him. What do? I genuinely do not know what to do. I'm panicking. This was never the life I wanted for my kids. I don't understand why he was just standing there. I have not even gotten a text or a call from him since I got sent the video. It's just been silent. I just can't get the sound of my daughter's screams out of my head. That's the sound no mother wants to hear. I can't explain it in the moment, but it felt like my blood went cold. I just felt pure fear. I never want to watch the footage again. Story 3. Original post. September 2, 2023. I, a 29-years-old female, have been with my husband, a 30-years-old male, for 7 years, married for 4. I've never had reason to suspect he was unfaithful to me or even remotely dissatisfied with our marriage. He likes to joke that we're still living the honeymoon phase nearly 5 years and 2 kids in. I wouldn't have questioned that, or him, were it not for a surprise I found in his car last month. When buckling our daughter into her car seat, I noticed something slotted between the cushions. I pulled it out and saw that it was a tampon. This wouldn't have been so unusual had I not had an IUD that has stopped my period for the past year, and I didn't even recognize the wrapper style. I brought it to my husband's attention, and he didn't seem to understand what it was, let alone why I was holding it, until I told him where I'd found it, and why I was almost certain it wasn't mine. He shrugged and said it probably belonged to his co-worker, Fiona. It's not uncommon for my husband to carpool to lunch with his co-workers, and we're both fairly close to Fiona and her husband, so I figured it was entirely possible the tampon had slipped out of her purse whenever he had driven with them or offered her a ride. No big deal. I put it out of my mind until we had dinner with Fiona and her husband a couple weeks later. I had sincerely wanted to believe my husband. I just couldn't get over the way it had been tucked in the seat and how my husband had seemed not to have any regard for it whatsoever. Maybe playing dumb. I don't know. I did something that I now feel kind of crazy for doing. I faked an emergency and asked Fiona if she had any tampons while we were out together. She handed me one almost identical to the tampon I'd found in our back seat, and I breathed a sigh of relief. So the tampon there was probably the same tampon here, and in all likelihood, there was an innocent explanation as to why it had been left in the back seat in the first place. I thought I'd seen the last of the out-of-place feminine hygiene products until I found another tampon this morning, this time in my sock drawer. I feel physically ill at the thought of my husband having an affair, and even more nauseated at the thought that the woman might have left these tampons out for me to find. If it was my husband's co-worker, why would she give herself away by offering me one the other night? In any other situation, I would want to talk to my husband about this, but I feel too sick and embarrassed to approach him with what I've found. What should I do? Relevant comments. I've had a period 30 years and never put a tampon in a sock drawer. Trust your gut, get cameras. Neither have I. I've considered so many explanations for the tampons that wouldn't implicate my husband, but none of them make sense, really. I'm terrified to set up a camera if it means confirming what I suspect right now. Has Fiona been over to your house and had time to plant the tampon? She's been to our house many times and vice versa. To my knowledge, she wasn't over any time in the past week, so if she planted that second tampon, she had to have found a window of time when I wasn't home. Any time she and her husband visit, we all stay downstairs, and you'd have to go really out of your way to make it to our bedroom, i.e., around our dogs, over the safety gate, past the other bedrooms. Not saying it's impossible, but definitely tricky to do on a quick bathroom break, I would guess. How old are your kids? Could they have found a tampon and put it in a random place? 2 and almost 4. Both have a mischievous streak, so I didn't want to rule out the possibility of one of them moving stuff around, but I can't imagine how they'd get their hands on one. Possibly 2 random tampons that I never bought. Update post. September 20, 2023. 18 days later. Contemplating every possible source of 2 tampons has been my personal hell for the past few weeks, but I wanted to share an update. Shortly after posting on here, I told my sister what happened. The tampon in the back seat and the sock drawer, my husband's cluelessness, the tampon from Fiona, and all the things I suspected but didn't want to believe. We compared tampons, save for the backseat one I had already discarded, and they were a match, just in different absorbencies. I hadn't left either in a place where my husband or daughters would have found them and moved them around. My daughters didn't know what they were or where they had come from. My sister was convinced it was Fiona there sleeping with my husband, messing with me, or both. Direct confrontation of either party still seemed like a bad idea, so she suggested inviting Fiona and her husband over for our Labor Day barbecue. Unfortunately, they already had plans. My sister and I agreed that it was too soon for cameras without any other evidence, so it was just a waiting game from there. Watching my husband for any changed behavior, there was none. Our house for any misplaced foreign items, there were none. And even the girls for any new friends they might have met. My sister's husband was adamant on this last point, and partly why he was inclined to believe that the tampons were harmless. If anything had been happening in or around our home, he said, it would be nearly impossible to keep it from me and the girls. Since my husband was the one taking them to and from daycare and most other activities during the week, I felt a good bit of consolation in that. It wasn't until my younger daughter, 2 years old, came down with something last week that I felt any differently. I wanted to be the one home taking care of her, but my husband insisted that I stay at work while he stayed home with her. I was okay with that. My sister and her husband figured it was a good sign that he would take the time off at a moment's notice, and at that point, we were all already beginning to put the tampon fiasco behind us. By the third or fourth day, I was just happy to see a near-healthy child and a husband who was helping see her through it. Toward the end of that week, though, I came home to something strange. The toddler that I'd left that morning in an old pajama set was now dressed in a onesie I'd never seen before, with a tiny clip in her hair. I can't say I have the sharpest memory, but I have a pretty good sense of what my kids wear on a day-to-day basis, and particularly what kinds of clothes they wear. I'd sworn off the full-length sleep suits with snaps across the front long before we'd ever had our second. The long snaps are just a pain and a no-go for efficient diaper changes, in my opinion. It's just not something I would dress her in, and my husband knows as much. He doesn't plan for, or buy, the girls' clothes, and he certainly doesn't accessorize them, so I was bewildered. I'm kind of floored at the thought of someone around our sick child without my knowledge. To answer a couple of questions. My 2-year-old can only string together a couple of words at a time, and when I ask her about her time with daddy or her clothes, bow, she answers based on the cues I give her, e.g., "Who gave you that pretty bow?" And she repeats, "Pretty bow back to me," or "Mama, Daddy," over and over. My older daughter, almost 4, was at daycare that morning, and she can't recall anything different from that day. Doesn't remember the pajama change or the hair clip, so my guess is she was changed sometime that morning, but I'm not totally sure. I have a 45-minute commute to work, so stopping by for lunch isn't really feasible. My sister has been kind enough to leave work and drive past a few times here and there, and she hasn't seen anything out of the ordinary. We have a Ring camera at the front door, and I've got the app on my phone with notifications on. Nothing there yet. If anyone has recommendations for more discreet surveillance, I'd be open to it. I'm just the least tech-savvy person and worry another camera will be easy to detect. Edit. And yes, we get our carbon monoxide detectors tested regularly. Is it possible one of the hair clips came from daycare? I could see the hair clip being a possibility, but less likely on the onesie. My younger daughter hadn't been to daycare in days, and if either of them had returned with something like that before, I would have noticed, especially since it was the kind of onesie I hate with a passion. People comment that they can't wait to find out the ending to this saga. My money's on the Hollywood horror ending. Hopefully dreamed up the dogs too, so I can finally stop picking up their imaginary shits and whatnot. Final update post. October 6, 2023, 16 days later. Title: 2 tampons mean my marriage is over. After nearly losing my mind over a hair clip and a onesie, I realized I wasn't getting anywhere with the accusations and half-baked guesswork. I'd gotten so absorbed in the paranoia and misery of my situation that I wasn't sleeping, eating, or caring for my kids the way I should have been, and I wasn't getting any answers. So I decided to pull the trigger on the hidden cameras and have them shipped to my sister's house, with my brother-in-law agreeing to help with the install, set up over at mine. Before the cameras were ever delivered, though, I got my long-awaited confirmation last week. A ring notification had alerted me to motion at the front door while I was at work, half expecting to see a delivery person, pet, or lawn care salesperson for the 15th time. You can imagine my surprise when I saw a clip of a young woman leading my daughter into the house hand in hand, with my husband and other daughter close behind them. The girls were supposed to be in daycare, and my husband at work. The woman, as far as I knew, was living 2 states away with a court order keeping her there. I immediately called my husband to ask him what this woman was doing in our house. He didn't answer, so I texted it to him. Even in his foolishness, he probably realized he had messed up by going through the front door, knew I had gotten the ring notification, and wanted to delay the inevitable. By the 5th or 6th subsequent call, though, he did pick up. The woman on the camera was my husband's sister. As I would come to find out later, she was the likely source of both tampons, the onesie, and the bow. She is also a registered offender and a recovering substance user who spent the better part of her adolescence and young adulthood coercing the silence of another one of my husband's family members after she had acted inappropriately toward them. I hadn't seen or heard from her in years, and from the way my husband talked about her, I didn't expect I ever would, but here she was, in our house, with our children. Suffice to say, I was livid. It wasn't an affair at all, and still, somehow, infinitely more upsetting knowing who it was and why all of this had been happening. Apparently, my sister-in-law, fresh off another stint in rehab, had wanted to reconnect and make amends with people she'd hurt, and my husband was high on that list. My husband didn't want me to know, or worse, try and keep her family, our children, away from her, so they'd been meeting in Secretoften at our house when I was at work. They would enter through the garage, in my husband's car, so the ring camera at the front door wouldn't tip me off. She spent the night on a weekend I had been on a business trip and slept in our bed. She babysat our girls on a night my husband told me he had dropped them off at his parents'. She bought the girls' clothes and dressed my youngest in the onesie and bow that my husband had promised on his life I had dressed her in myself. My husband swore this was all in my head, the tampons, the onesie, the bow, and all the rest. He was perfectly content to watch me agonize for weeks over a woman he insisted didn't exist, shrugging off each progressively more unsettling discovery like it was news to him and telling me I was being irrational. He insinuated that I was experiencing postpartum depression 2 years after I'd given birth. 4 years after I'd told him that one of my biggest fears for motherhood was to suffer from PPD like my mother had with me, to not be fully present for our babies and be left with a world of guilt and regret as they grew older. He told me I wasn't sleeping enough, that I missed the girls too much, that I needed to take a step back and reevaluate the state of my mental health. I gave him the benefit of the doubt because he was my husband, and because no other version of events made sense. Now, after a month of this psychological spiral, I have nothing to show for my trust but this devastating situation. And a lot of anger. Story 4. Aita to divorce my husband and leave him with the kid after finding out I'm not biologically the mom? Original post, August 5, 2024. I can't believe my life has come to this. All I ever do is go out of my way to help others, but on the few occasions I need help, nobody ever comes through for me. I, a 36-years-old female, have been with my husband, a 35-years-old male, for a total of almost 10 years, married for 7. We had what I thought was my child by surrogate over 2 years ago because after 4 years of trying to conceive with no success despite medical interventions, it turns out I am unable to carry a child to term. I had always wanted to be a mum. Devastated is an understatement regarding how I felt when I found out I have a medical condition that would make it nearly impossible to carry a baby to term. It was even more upsetting when I had to get a major surgery to remove uterine growths with the hope to increase fertility, and complications during surgery warranted a partial hysterectomy involving removal of my uterus only. I still had my ovaries, so we started looking into the cost of a surrogate. It is really expensive. My close friend since college, who'd already had 2 kids of her own, offered to serve as the surrogate for us to cut down on costs. After 2 disappointing IVF sessions that did not result in pregnancy, she became pregnant on the 3rd try and carried a boy to term for us. I was so happy and busy after the birth, between being a mum and returning to work after a 4-week parental leave, so I didn't notice any warning signs. I should have noticed the red flags and warning signs early on but did not, because I was so exhausted from working so much at my stressful job and 2 part-time jobs to cover most of the bills and anticipated medical and legal costs associated with this friend becoming our surrogate. I was the primary breadwinner. My friend and my husband started talking more, and I would sometimes come home from my weekend job to find her already hanging out at our house when my husband was there. I chalked it up as innocuous. It's good for her to know my husband better since she was in the process of hopefully carrying our child for us. I was grateful to have someone helping us have a child. I also thought it was weird that our son has brown eyes when both of us have blue. Then I found out that while this is uncommon, it's possible sometimes due to many genes controlling eye color. Recently, it all came to a head when I took our son to a doctor's appointment, and they did a metabolic panel and blood tests, which showed that he had a blood type that is not biologically possible to have with me as his mother. He's B+, I'm A+, my husband is O+. Immediately I started worrying it was the fertility clinic's fault, and that they'd messed up and implanted the wrong embryo. I started lining up lawyer consultations to possibly sue the clinic and looked into having a DNA parentage test done. The test results showed that I'm not the mother, but my husband still is the father. I was heartbroken and angrier than ever, talked to lawyers about medical malpractice in the fertility clinic we'd used. Then my husband confessed that he'd slept with my friend, our surrogate, on a few different occasions during our struggle to have her get pregnant with our embryos. This means what I thought was our son conceived by IVF and carried by a surrogate isn't my son at all, and was in fact conceived naturally, which I can't ever do. Livid and absolutely broken at the same time doesn't even begin to describe how I feel. I have been breaking down into crying spells over and over again about this. He claims he didn't ever think pregnancy could result because he pulled out, and he had always assumed that he was the reason for our earlier struggles to conceive, both before my hysterectomy and during the IVF insemination process with this friend. I felt an immediate triple betrayal, from what was supposed to be my husband, my friend, and now knowing my child isn't even really mine. I had such white-hot rage and despair, I immediately left home and stayed at a hotel for almost a week before asking my parents to let me stay at home for a while. I admit I left our son with him. I am now filing for divorce because he cheated and betrayed me in the worst possible way. I have also cut off my friendship with my friend, the surrogate, and feel afraid to trust anyone else now. I have seen a divorce lawyer to see about giving up my legal rights to this child so I don't have to face such betrayal or owe child support. My husband and the friend surrogate admit they were wrong and keep apologizing, but also called me immature and heartless to just give up on my son like that. My parents also say I can't just give up on a kid that I went through so many legal and medical hoops to have. When I told them I refused to stay in a cheater marriage and I'd rather adopt someday with a better, more trustworthy partner, they also told me I was wrong and that maintaining my parental rights isn't much different than if I adopted outright. They said it isn't blood that makes a family. They are all about me divorcing my cheater husband but keep telling me I'm making a mistake giving up my parental rights. Some of my other friends agree with what I'm doing. A few admitted they weren't big enough to swallow pride and care for an affair baby, or to see daily reminders of my friend, surrogate's betrayal every time I look at her. Son, I just want a clean break and a fresh start. I'm also looking at relocating several states away. Am I the asshole to give up my parental rights in the divorce because a kid I paid a lot of money to have born by surrogacy isn't biologically mine at all, but the surrogates? TLDR. I recently found out that a son that my husband and I had born to a surrogate, since I'm infertile, is biologically my husband's kid, but not mine. My husband confessed that he slept with my friend, who served as surrogate, during the long IVF process, so the kid is actually conceived from an affair. I am filing for divorce and looking to give up my parental rights so I can move away and get a clean break from the whole situation, without having to owe child support for a kid that's not mine. Some friends agree with my plan, but my husband and parents think I'm in the wrong to just cut off a kid I raised for 2 years. AITA has no consensus bot, but the original poster was considered not the asshole. Update, in comments, January 4, 2025, 5 months later. Update. I'm low on time right now, but we'll be posting a separate update post later. I'm not staying, and I'm not caring for him anymore. I was not even offered a choice in the matter at all, which is why I've kept telling myself I shouldn't want to compare myself to men in a similar type of parentage situation, and have kept myself aloof toward the boy I thought was mine. I have no legal rights anymore, no matter what, because she fought to get her son back. I'm actually a lot more upset about losing this child than I presented in my post, and I'm realizing it more and more with each passing day. The choice wasn't mine, and I lost. I posted that I wouldn't want to be the one raising someone else's kid as more of a coping mechanism than anything. She got to have her kid, he left me, and I'm stuck with nothing. Relevant comments. Explaining legal guardianship after the maternal tests confirmed she wasn't biologically the mother. And yes, that is exactly what I've been going through all these months. I have little to no rights. I'm stuck coping with major loss. My best chance at still being this boy's guardian is to stay with that awful man, hope he lets me stay, and agreeing to let that woman have 50/50 and be the one who still pays most of the bills for that unmotivated man in the meantime while he continues to cheat. It also came out that she wasn't his only affair either. He's been cheating all along for most of the time that we'd been trying without success to get pregnant. So for anyone who acts like I'm selfish, or that I make their blood boil, they don't know me like that, and I don't have any real choice in the matter. On the question of her having intact ovaries, obviously I have eggs if my ovaries are intact, and they extracted eggs to form the embryos prior to inseminating. There's still eggs remaining there. Describing the fertility clinic's involvement. The fertility clinic was just involved in the egg extraction, embryo formation, and storage of eggs and embryos. Another medical practice utilized the in vitro fertilization methods with the person I thought would be our surrogate. He did not pick the surrogate for use. It was a personal friend who agreed to do this out of the supposedly kindness of her heart, since she already had 2 prior children and knew that she could carry to term easily and didn't mind being pregnant. Had we gone through a professional surrogacy practice, there would have been other steps involved and they would have found a few options for surrogates for us. But the costs were way too high, which is why we skipped some steps and saved a lot of money by going through a friend that we thought we could trust. Now, I feel like I can trust no one. I don't even feel like I could try surrogacy again far in the future because my trust in that is broken. On the surrogate's relationship status, she doesn't have a husband. She had 2 kids with a long-term boyfriend, but they split 5 years or so ago. She's not married. They broke up around 5 or 6 years ago. Did the surrogate sign legal papers regarding the parental rights? The only paperwork that was legally drafted was for her transferring over the parental rights to us. Much like an adoption, in the event that there is already a mutual off-the-books agreement to adopt from someone already personally known. We were trying to do it as cheap as possible because we don't make much money, and the costs that couldn't be avoided were sky high enough to the point I took out loans from the bank and then picked up 2 part-time jobs on the side to pay toward these loans. When asked if she'd tried to get reimbursed for the IVF costs, I tried, and failed. The doctor and clinic I complained to said the IVF costs were associated with the formation and storage of embryos, and the procedures associated with the insemination, not the outcome.